The silence that saves. Clara Thornton's knees hit the frozen dirt as her legs finally gave out. 40 miles. She'd carried her dying daughter 40 miles through October cold, and now her body was done. Behind her, 2 boys stood like ghosts, too hungry to cry, too tired to speak. The sign on the gate read, "Barn hand wanted. No women, no children, no exceptions." Clara pulled herself up and pushed the gate open anyway. If you're watching from anywhere in this world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far Clara's story travels. Hit that subscribe button and stay until the end, because what happens next will shatter your heart and piece it back together. The gate screamed when Clara shoved it. "Mama!" Samuel grabbed her arm. "The sign—" "I saw it. It says no women." "I can read, Sam." "Then why are we—" "Because Lily ain't ate in 3 days. Because Tommy can't walk no more. Because I didn't drag us 40 miles to let a piece of wood stop me." Clara shifted her daughter higher against her chest. The girl weighed nothing. Skin and bones and fever. "Now hush and follow me." She walked through. The ranch looked like something had died here, and nobody bothered to bury it. Barns sagging. Fences rotting. Smell of manure so thick it burned her eyes. A man came out of the big barn. Tall, hard-looking. Gray in his hair, stone in his face. He stopped 20 feet away and just stood there staring at her like she was a coyote that wandered onto his land. Clara stared right back. "Ranch is closed." His voice sounded like he'd forgotten how to use it. "I ain't visiting. I'm here for the job." "You blind." "I see fine." "Then you saw my sign." "I saw it." "No women, no children." He crossed his arms. "Meant every word. And I mean every word when I say I'm here for the job." The man's jaw went tight. His eyes dropped to Lily limp in Clara's arms, face flushed red with fever, breathing shallow and wrong. "Your girl's sick," he said. "She's starving. We all are. That ain't my problem. I ain't asking you to make it your problem. I'm asking for work. I don't hire women." Clara's spine snapped straight. Every bone in her body begged her to sit down to rest, to give up. She locked her knees instead. "You don't hire nobody from the look of things. When's the last time someone cleaned them stalls? When's the last time your chickens got fresh water?" She pointed at the nearest barn. "I can smell the rot from here. Your animals are sick, your feed's gone bad, and your whole operation's about 3 months from falling down around your ears." Something shifted in his face. Not much, just a flicker. "You know livestock. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, worked it till I was 16. I can birth a calf, cure a sick hen, muck a stall faster than any man you ever hired. And them—" He nodded toward Samuel and Tommy. "They work too. Sam's 10 strong as a boy twice his age. Tommy's 7 good with animals. They earn their keep. And the baby—" Clara's arms tightened. "Lily's 4. She won't be no trouble." The man was quiet. His eyes moved slow from Clara to Samuel to Tommy to Lily and back again. Measuring. Deciding. "Where's their daddy?" "Dead. 8 months now. Cave in at Morrison Mine." "Sorry." "Thank you." More silence. Clara's legs shook. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She'd walked 40 miles on nothing but desperation and the memory of food. Her body was done pretending it wasn't. "There's a boarding house in Redemption," the man said. 12 miles east. They take in women." Clara laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. "Mister, I just came from Redemption." His whole body changed, shoulders stiffened, eyes narrowed. "You came from the Golden Rest." "Yeah." "Victor Crane's place." "That's right." The man's hands curled into fists at his sides. "What did Crane do?" Clara hesitated. The truth was heavy. She'd been carrying it for months, and it got heavier every day. "He offered me a room," she said carefully. "Said I could work off the cost. Cooking, cleaning, regular work. But the debt kept growing. No matter how hard I worked, I owed more every day. And then he started talking about other ways I could pay. The man's voice went flat. What kind of ways? Clara met his eyes. The kind that breaks a woman. The kind that turns her into something to be bought and sold. The kind I'd die before I agreed to. But you ran instead. I had to. He was going to take my children. Said they was collateral. Clara's voice cracked. She hated herself for it. Said if I didn't pay one way, I'd pay another. Said he'd send men after me if I ran. You ran anyway. Wouldn't you? Lily whimpered against Clara's chest. A thin, weak sound barely there. The sound of a child too far gone to cry proper. Mama! Samuel's voice was tight with fear. She's burning up worse. Clara pressed her lips to Lily's forehead. Hot as a stove. Too hot. She looked at the man standing there with his hard face and his crossed arms and his sign that said, "No women, no children, no exceptions." Please. The word tasted like dirt, like surrender. Clara hadn't begged for nothing since she was 16 years old, since her daddy sold her to a stranger for $200 and a handshake. I ain't asking for charity, she said. I'll work harder than any man you ever hired. I'll clean your barns, fix your coops, tend your animals from dawn to dark. I'll earn every penny. Her voice broke again. But my girl needs food. She needs warmth. If you turn us away right now, she won't make it through the night. The man stared at her. Then he turned and walked toward the house. Clara's heart dropped through her feet. That was it. She'd begged, actually begged, and he'd walked away. Her children would die out here in the cold because one hard-hearted man couldn't see past a sign he wrote. You coming or not? Clara's head snapped up. The man had stopped halfway to the house. He was looking back at her over his shoulder. Got soup on the stove, he said. Ain't much, but it's hot. Your girl needs food and a bed. We'll talk about the job after. Clara's legs moved before her brain caught up. Sam? Her voice came out strange. Take Lily. I got her mama. Samuel lifted his baby sister like she weighed nothing. Because she did. Because 3 days without food had turned her into a ghost. Come on, Tommy. Samuel's voice was steady. Steadier than a 10-year-old's voice had any right to be. We're going inside. The kitchen was warm. That was the first thing Clara noticed. Actual warmth. After 3 days of cold that had seeped into her bones and made a home there. A fire crackled in the hearth. Something that smelled like heaven bubbled on the stove. Sit. The man pointed at the table. I'll get bowls. Clara collapsed into a chair. Tommy's head hit the table before she could stop him. The boy was asleep in seconds. Samuel carried Lily to the chair nearest the fire, still holding her like she might shatter if he let go. The man moved through the kitchen fast. Efficient. Like a man who'd done everything alone for a long, long time. He ladled soup into 4 bowls, tore chunks off a loaf of bread that looked 3 days old, and set it all on the table. Eat. Tommy didn't even wake up proper. His hand found the bowl on instinct, and he drank the soup straight from the rim, not bothering with the spoon. Sam. Clara kept her voice gentle. You too. Lily first. Lily can't eat on her own yet. I'll feed her. You eat. Samuel hesitated. His eyes were too old. Way too old for 10. Finally, he set Lily in Clara's lap and grabbed his own bowl. He ate slower than Tommy, but just as desperate. Clara dipped her fingers in the soup and touched them to Lily's lips. The little girl stirred. Her tongue darted out. That's it, baby. Just a little. Drop by drop. Slow and patient. The soup was thin, mostly broth, but Lily swallowed each mouthful. After a few minutes, her eyes opened. Mama. Clara's throat closed up. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm hungry. I know. Keep eating. The man watched from the corner, arms crossed, face unreadable. Clara felt his eyes on her, measuring, judging, deciding something she couldn't guess. When the bowls were empty and Tommy was snoring on the table, the man finally spoke. Name's Jedediah Callahan. Jed. This is my ranch. Clara Thornton. These are my children, Samuel Thomas and Lily. Jed nodded once. Job pays $20 a month, room and board included. You clean the barns, tend the chickens, keep the pigs from dying of neglect. You're up before dawn, and you don't stop till the work's done. 20. Clara frowned. Your sign said 25. Sign didn't account for feeding 4 mouths instead of 1. Fair enough. More than fair considering. I'll take it. Room off the kitchen. Small, but it's got a stove. You and the girl can sleep there. Boys can bunk in the... No. Jed's eyebrow went up. No. My children stay with me. All 3. Same room. That room ain't built for 4. Then we'll make it work. I ain't separating my family. Not for nothing. Not for nobody. Something flickered in Jed's eyes. Respect, maybe. Fine. Your problem, not mine. I'll handle it. You start tomorrow. Dawn. Chicken coop gets cleaned first. I want eggs collected before breakfast. It'll be done. Jed turned to leave, then stopped in the doorway. He stood there a long moment, back to them, shoulders tight with something he wasn't saying. Mrs. Thornton. Mr. Callahan. Victor Crane's a dangerous man. Got connections all over this territory. Judges, lawmen, people who owe him favors. Jed's voice went hard. If he decides to come after you, he won't stop at one try. Clara's stomach clenched. I know. And you came here anyway. Didn't have much choice. Jed turned around. His face was still stone, but something in his voice had changed. Long as you work for me, you're under my protection. Anyone comes onto this ranch looking to take you or your children, they'll answer to me first. Understand? Clara blinked. She hadn't expected that. I understand. Good. Get some rest. Long day tomorrow. He left. Clara sat in the warm kitchen, Lily sleeping in her arms, Tommy snoring on the table, Samuel watching her with those 2 old eyes. Mama. Samuel's voice was barely a whisper. Are we safe here? Clara looked around. Dusty, neglected, but warm, solid. I don't know, baby, but it's closer than we've been in a long time. Samuel nodded slow. I like him. You don't know him. I know he fed us, gave us a place to sleep, said he'd protect us. Samuel's jaw set stubborn. Reckon that's enough to start. Clara reached out and smoothed the hair off her son's forehead. When'd you get so smart? Had to be. Somebody's got to look after you. Clara laughed. It surprised her, the sound of it. She hadn't laughed in months. Go to sleep, Sam. We got work in the morning. What about you? I'll sleep soon. But she didn't. Long after the children were settled, Tommy carried to the small room, Lily tucked into the narrow bed, Samuel curled up on blankets on the floor. Clara sat by the window and stared at the darkness. Victor Crane was out there somewhere. She could feel it. The same instinct that had told her to run was telling her now that he hadn't given up. Men like Crane never did. She was property to him, a debt unpaid, an investment that had slipped away. He'd come for her. The only question was when. Clara was up before dawn. 3 hours of sleep, not enough. But it would have to do. She splashed cold water on her face, checked on the children, all 3 still sleeping, and went to find the chicken coop. It was worse than she'd thought. Feed rotting on the ground, water thick with slime, nesting boxes full of filth. The chickens looked half-dead feathers, matted eyes dull. Lord have mercy, Clara muttered. What kind of man lets things get this bad? She got to work. An hour later, Samuel appeared in the doorway. Mama, you should have woke me. You needed sleep. I'm fine. He grabbed a shovel. Show me what to do. They worked side by side. Clara showed him how to scrape out the old bedding, how to scrub the boxes, how to check for cracks where predators could get in. Samuel learned fast. Too fast, like a boy who'd figured out young that survival meant being useful. "Mama?" Samuel didn't look up from his work. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Mr. Callahan, he lost someone, didn't he?" Clara paused. "What makes you say that?" "The way he looked at Lily, like seeing her hurt him somehow." Samuel scraped his shovel along the floor. "Like he was remembering something he didn't want to remember." "Smart boy, too smart." "I think he lost everything," Clara said quietly. "Wife, child, the will to care about much of anything. Like you did when Pa died." The question hit Clara like a fist. "I lost your father, lost our home, our future." She set down her rake and looked at her son. "But I never lost everything, Sam, because I still had you, and Tommy, and Lily. You three are why I'm still standing. You're why I walked 40 miles. You're why I'll fight Victor Crane and anyone else who tries to hurt us." Samuel's eyes went bright. "I'm scared, Mama." "I know, baby. What if he finds us? Then we fight. What if we can't win?" Clara pulled her son into her arms. This boy who'd become a man overnight, who'd carried his siblings through hell without complaining. "Then we go down swinging," she whispered. "Because that's what Thorntons do." They finished the coop by mid-morning. 17 eggs more than the hens had laid in weeks now that they had clean water and fresh feed. Clara carried them to the kitchen. Jed was sitting at the table, staring at a cup of cold coffee, like it held the answers to questions he'd stopped asking. He looked up when she walked in. "Eggs?" Clara set the basket on the counter. "Your hens weren't laying because the coop was filthy. Should do better now." Jed's eyes moved past her to the window. Samuel and Tommy were in the yard. Tommy had woken up and insisted on helping mostly by chasing chickens and making his brother laugh. "Your boys work hard," Jed said. "They've had to." "The little one, how is she?" "Fever broke in the night. She's sleeping now, but she'll be up and moving by afternoon." Jed nodded. He picked up his coffee, took a sip, grimaced at the cold. "I'll start on the pigsty next," Clara said. "Unless there's something more urgent." "The barn, third stall on the left. Mare's been limping for a week. You said you know horses." "I do." "Take a look. Been too busy to deal with it myself." Clara nodded and turned to leave. "Mrs. Thornton." She stopped. "You did good work on that coop. Better than I expected." It wasn't praise exactly, but it wasn't criticism either. "Thank you, Mr. Callahan." The mare was beautiful. Even sick and neglected Clara could see it, the clean lines, the intelligent eyes, the quality breeding. "Hey, girl," Clara murmured, approaching slow. "I ain't gonna hurt you." The horse snorted, but didn't shy away. Clara ran her hands down the front left leg, feeling for heat, for swelling, for anything wrong. There. A small abscess on the hoof hidden under mud and grime. Infected, painful, but treatable. "Sam," Clara called. "Bring me the medical kit from the wall, and clean water." Her son appeared with Tommy trailing behind. "What's wrong with her?" Tommy asked, eyes wide. "Infection in her hoof. Nothing serious if we catch it in time." Clara took the kit and started working. "Watch close. I'm going to show you both how to fix it." She cleaned the hoof, drained the abscess, packed it with a poultice. "She'll be walking normal in a week," Clara said. "Maybe less." "How'd you know what to do?" Tommy asked. "My daddy taught me. His daddy taught him." Clara smiled at her youngest son. "Someday, I'll teach you." Tommy's face lit up. "Really? Really? Can I name her?" Clara laughed. "She ain't ours to name, sweetheart." "But she don't got a name. Mr. Callahan just calls her the mare. That ain't a proper name." "What would you call her?" Tommy thought hard. His face scrunched up with concentration. "Penny," he said finally. "Because she's the color of a new penny." Clara looked at the mare copper coat gleaming now that she'd brushed off some of the dirt. "Penny," Clara repeated. "I like it." "Me too," Samuel said. "It suits her." Tommy beamed like he'd just won a prize. For a moment, just a moment, Clara forgot about Victor Crane. Forgot about the running, the fear, the 40 miles of hell. She just stood in a barn with her 2 sons, watching them smile, and let herself feel something that might have been hope. Then she heard hoofbeats. Distant, but getting closer. Clara's blood went cold. "Sam." Her voice came out sharp. "Take your brother to the house. Find Lily. Stay inside." "Mama!" "Now Samuel." The boys ran. Clara grabbed a pitchfork from the wall and moved to the barn door. 3 riders were coming down the road. She couldn't see their faces yet, but she didn't need to. She knew. Victor Crane had found her. "Simon." Jed appeared beside her. Clara hadn't heard him approach. "Get inside," he said. His voice was quiet, dangerous. "They're here for me." "I know. Get inside." "Mr. Callahan." "Jed." He pulled a rifle from somewhere she hadn't even seen him carrying it. "And I said get inside. Now." Clara hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab her children and disappear into the hills. But she was done running. "No." Jed turned to look at her. His eyes were hard, but there was something else there too. Something that almost looked like respect. "You're a stubborn woman, Mrs. Thornton." "Clara, and yeah, I am." The riders were close enough now to make out faces. 3 men, hard-looking, the kind of men Victor Crane kept on his payroll. The one in front was older. Gray hair, scar through his eyebrow. He rode like a man who'd done bad things and slept fine after. He stopped his horse 20 feet away. "Jedediah Callahan," the man said. "Been a while?" "Garrett." Jed's voice was ice. "Get off my land." "Now that ain't friendly." Garrett smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm here on legitimate business, looking for a woman, Clara Thornton. Word is, she's working for you." "Word's wrong." "That's so." Garrett's eyes slid past Jed to Clara. "Funny, she looks an awful lot like the woman I'm looking for." "You're looking at my cook." "Your cook." Garrett laughed. "That's rich. Victor Crane's got papers saying she owes him 6 months' wages. I'm here to collect." "Crane's papers ain't worth the ink they're printed with." "Judge in Redemption disagrees." "Then the judge in Redemption is bought and paid for, same as you." Garrett's smile faded. "I'm gonna give you one chance, Callahan. Hand over the woman and we ride out peaceful. Nobody gets hurt. And if I don't, then things get unpleasant." Jed raised his rifle. "Get off my land." The 2 men behind Garrett went for their guns. A shot rang out. Clara flinched. But it wasn't Jed who'd fired. A man stepped out from behind the barn, older, weathered, holding a rifle that was still smoking. "I'd keep them hands where I can see 'em," the man said calmly. "Next shot won't be a warning." Another man appeared from the other side of the yard. Then another. Ranch hands. Clara hadn't even known Jed had ranch hands. Garrett looked around. His smile was completely gone now. "This ain't over, Callahan." "Yeah, it is." "Victor Crane don't give up easy." "Neither do I." Jed stepped forward, rifle aimed at Garrett's chest. "You ride back to Crane. You tell him Clara Thornton is under my protection. You tell him if he sends anyone else onto my land, they won't ride back out. You got that?" Garrett's eyes flicked to Clara. Something ugly moved across his face. "She ain't worth dying for, Callahan." "Maybe not to you." The 2 men held each other's gaze for a long, tense moment. Then Garrett wheeled his horse around. "This ain't over," he said again. "Ride out, Garrett, before I change my mind about letting you." The 3 men rode away. Clara didn't realize she was shaking until Jed turned to look at her. "You all right?" Yeah. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm all right. They'll be back. I know. You still want to stay? Clara looked at this man, who'd just faced down 3 armed men for a woman he barely knew, who'd offered her protection without asking for anything in return. Yeah, she said. I still want to stay. Jed nodded once. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his hard face. Good, because I wasn't planning on letting you leave. He walked back toward the house. Clara stood in the yard, pitchfork still clutched in her hands, heart still pounding in her chest. From the window of the main house, 3 small faces stared out at her. Samuel. Tommy. Lily, awake now, pressed against the glass. Clara raised her hand and waved. They waved back. And somewhere deep in her chest, in a place she'd thought was dead and buried, something stirred. Something that felt almost like hope, almost like home. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed with Lily curled against her side, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into darkness. Samuel's breathing was steady on the floor. Tommy had fallen asleep mid-sentence, still talking about the horse he'd named Penny. But Clara's mind wouldn't quiet. Garrett's face kept appearing behind her closed eyes. That ugly smile, those cold words, she ain't worth dying for Callahan. And Jed's answer. Maybe not to you. What did that mean? Why would a man she'd known for 2 days stand between her and armed men? Why would he risk his ranch, his life, for a woman who'd shown up at his gate with nothing but desperation and 3 hungry children? Clara turned onto her side and watched the moonlight creep across the floor. She didn't trust kindness. Kindness always came with a price. Her father had been kind before he sold her. Henry had been kind before he started treating her like property. Victor Crane had been the kindest of all, right up until he wasn't. But Jed Callahan didn't feel like any of them. He was hard, rough, barely spoke more than necessary. But when he'd stood in that yard with his rifle raised, something in his eyes had told her the truth. He meant what he said. He'd protect her, or die trying. The question was why. Clara finally fell asleep as the first gray light touched the horizon. She dreamed of running, of hoofbeats behind her, of Lily's weight growing heavier in her arms until she couldn't carry her anymore. She woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, Clara didn't know where she was. The bed was unfamiliar. The ceiling was wrong. Then memory flooded back and she sat up fast, heart pounding. The children were gone. Clara threw off the blanket and stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep, still caught in the panic of her dreams. She stopped dead. Jed Callahan was standing at the stove with a spatula in his hand. Tommy sat at the table chattering away about something while shoveling eggs into his mouth. Samuel was there, too quiet but eating. And Lily. Lily was in Jed's arms. The big man held her daughter like she was made of glass, one arm supporting her weight, while he somehow managed to flip eggs with his free hand. Lily was babbling at him, pointing at things, and Jed was nodding along like he understood every word. Mama. Tommy spotted her first. Mr. Callahan made breakfast. He said you needed to sleep, so he let us out quiet, and he's been teaching me how to crack eggs. Only I broke 2, but he said that's okay because everybody breaks eggs when they're learning, and... breathed Tommy. Clara's voice came out strange, thick. Jed turned around. He didn't look embarrassed at being caught holding her daughter, just nodded at the table. Sit. Food's almost ready. You didn't have to. You were up late. Heard you moving around. Jed slid eggs onto a plate and set it in front of her. Eat. Clara sat down because her legs weren't working right. She stared at the plate. Eggs, toast, coffee already poured. Her children fed and happy and safe. When was the last time someone had taken care of her? She couldn't remember. Mrs. Thornton. Jed's voice cut through her thoughts. Clara, you all right? Yeah. She picked up her fork. Yeah, I'm fine. She wasn't fine. Something was cracking open inside her chest, something she'd kept locked away for years. But she couldn't fall apart now. Not in front of her children. Not in front of this man who kept doing things that didn't make sense. Thank you, she said quietly. For breakfast. For letting me sleep. Jed shrugged. You worked hard yesterday. Can't have you collapsing before noon. Still, thank you. Their eyes met across the kitchen. Something passed between them. Clara didn't have words for it. Recognition, maybe. Two people who'd forgotten what kindness felt like, stumbling across it in the last place they expected. Lily reached up and patted Jed's face with her small hand. Mr. Cowboy, she said seriously. More eggs. Jed's expression didn't change, but Clara could have sworn she saw something soften around his eyes. Yes, ma'am, he said, and went to make more eggs. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Clara was up before dawn every morning, tending the chickens, checking on the pigs mucking out stalls. Samuel worked beside her, learning everything she taught him with a focus that sometimes scared her. Tommy bounced between helping and playing, equally fascinated by the chickens and the horses and the barn cats that appeared from nowhere to wind around his ankles, and Lily followed Jed. It happened gradually, so slowly, Clara almost didn't notice at first. Lily would toddle out of the kitchen and somehow end up wherever Jed was working. He'd look down, find a 4-year-old attached to his leg, and just keep working like it was normal. She's bothering you, Clara said one afternoon, finding Lily perched on a hay bale while Jed repaired a bridle. I'll take her back inside. She ain't bothering me. She's talking your ear off. Don't mind. Jed held up the bridle, squinting at his work. She's good company. Lily beamed. Mr. Cowboy says I'm good company. I heard him, baby. He's teaching me about horses. Penny likes apples best, but you gotta cut them small so she don't choke. And you gotta hold your hand flat when you give them to her, or she might bite your fingers, but she wouldn't mean to because horses are gentle. Really, only sometimes they get scared and... Breathe, Lily. Jed's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Clara had been watching for those almost smiles, cataloging them like rare flowers. She's fine, Jed said. Let her stay. So Clara let her stay, and something that had been wound tight in her chest loosened just a little. A week passed. Then 2. Clara transformed the ranch without meaning to. The chicken coop gleamed. The pigs stopped looking sickly. The barn cats got fat on the mice she encouraged them to hunt. Even the ranch hands, 3 men named Hank, Ezra, and Old Pete, started looking at her with something like respect. You've got a gift, Mrs. Thornton, Hank said one evening. He was the oldest of the 3, gray-bearded and quiet, the kind of man who only spoke when he had something worth saying. This place ain't looked this good in years. Just hard work. Nah, it's more than that. Hank glanced toward the main house where Jed was fixing something on the porch. You've got a gift for making things come back to life. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and went back to work. The first real crisis came in the 3rd week. Clara was in the barn checking on Penny. The mare's hoof had healed clean, and she was walking normal again when she heard shouting from the north pasture. She ran. By the time she got there, Ezra was on the ground, and Hank was kneeling over him. Blood everywhere. More blood than Clara had ever seen. What happened? She dropped beside them, already reaching for Ezra's leg, where the blood was coming from. Barbed wire. Hank's voice was tight. Fence snapped while he was working on it. Caught him right across the thigh. Clara looked at the wound. Deep, jagged, blood pumping out in rhythmic spurts. Arterial. Give me your belt. She didn't wait for Hank to respond, just yanked it off him and wrapped it around Ezra's thigh above the wound. Hold this, tight as you can. Mrs. Thornton, do it. Hank held. Clara pressed both hands against the wound, feeling the blood hot and slick between her fingers. Ezra, look at me. The man's eyes were going glassy. Shock setting in. Ezra, look at me. His eyes focused, barely. You're gonna be fine, Clara said. You hear me? I've seen worse than this. You're gonna be fine, but I need you to stay awake. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. His voice was weak, wrong. Good. That's good. Clara looked at Hank. Where's Jed? Rode out to check the south fence line this morning. Won't be back for hours. Then you're gonna help me. We need to get him to the house. I need clean water, clean cloth, and whiskey. Lots of whiskey. Whiskey. For the wound, not for drinking. Clara adjusted her grip, pressing harder. The bleeding was slowing, barely. Now help me move him. They got Ezra to the kitchen somehow. Clara lost track of the details, just muscle and sweat and the metallic smell of blood. She laid him on the table she'd eaten breakfast at that morning and went to work. The wound was bad, worse than she'd let on. The wire had cut deep, nicking something important. If she didn't close it right, he'd bleed out before nightfall. Hold him down, she told Hank. This is gonna hurt. She poured whiskey into the wound. Ezra screamed, thrashed. Hank pinned him to the table with all his weight. Clara didn't flinch. She'd done this before. In mining camps where the nearest doctor was 50 miles away and men got hurt every day. You learned or you watched people die. She'd learned. She cleaned the wound, found the bleeder, tied it off with thread from her sewing kit because there wasn't anything else. Then she stitched him up 23 stitches neat and small, the way her mama had taught her to sew before everything went wrong. By the time she finished, her arms were shaking and her dress was soaked with blood. But Ezra was breathing. His color was coming back. Is he gonna make it? Hank's voice was rough. Yeah. Clara wiped her hands on a rag that used to be white. He needs rest. Clean bandages twice a day. No work for at least 3 weeks. Where'd you learn to do that? Clara looked down at her hands, still trembling, still red. Places where there wasn't any other choice. Jed rode in at sunset. He walked into the kitchen and stopped dead at the sight of Ezra unconscious on the table, Clara sitting beside him, still covered in blood. What the hell happened? Clara told him. Short sentences, just the facts. Jed listened without interrupting. When she finished, he crossed to the table and looked at her stitches, examined them close. You did this? Yes. Where'd you learn? Mining camps. Men got hurt all the time. Somebody had to know what to do. Jed was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Clara, really looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You saved his life. I did what needed doing. No. Jed's voice was firm. You saved his life. Most people would have panicked, would have let him bleed out while they waited for help. You didn't. Clara's throat tightened. I couldn't just let him die. I know. Jed reached out and touched her shoulder. Brief, gentle. That's what makes you different. His hand dropped. He turned away. I'll sit with him tonight. You get cleaned up. Get some rest. I should... You've done enough. Jed's voice brooked no argument. More than enough. Let me take this watch. Clara wanted to protest, wanted to insist that she could handle it, but her body was screaming for rest, and somewhere in the house her children were probably worried sick. All right, she said, but you wake me if anything changes. I will. She stood up. Her legs wobbled. Jed steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Easy. I'm fine. You're dead on your feet. Come on. He walked her to the door of her room. The children were inside, all 3 of them, piled on the bed, awake and waiting. Mama? Tommy launched himself at her. There was so much blood. Hank said Ezra got hurt, and you fixed him like a doctor, and... Shh, baby. I'm okay. Everything's okay. You got blood on your dress. I know. I'll wash it tomorrow. Lily held up her arms, and Clara picked her up despite her exhaustion, held her daughter close and breathed in the clean smell of her hair. Mama saved somebody, Lily said solemnly. Mr. Cowboy said so. Clara looked past her children to where Jed stood in the doorway. Thank you, she said. For what? For letting me rest, for watching over Ezra, for... She trailed off. There was too much to thank him for. She didn't have the words. Jed nodded once. Get some sleep, Clara. He closed the door behind him. Clara sank onto the bed with Lily still in her arms. Samuel scooted closer on one side, Tommy on the other. Her children surrounded her, warm and alive and safe. "You're a hero, Mama," Tommy whispered. "I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just—" "You are." Samuel's voice was quiet but fierce. "You are a hero, and I'm proud to be your son." Clara's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. "I'm proud of all of you," she managed. "Every single day." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, holding on. Ezra healed. Clara changed his bandages twice a day just like she'd promised. Made him drink water and eat soup even when he complained. Made him stay in bed even when he swore he was fine. "You're worse than my mama," Ezra grumbled on the 5th day. "She wasn't half this stubborn." "Your mama ever save your life?" "No, ma'am." "Then hush and drink your soup." Ezra drank his soup. The other ranch hands treated Clara different after that. They'd been respectful before, but now there was something else. Gratitude, maybe. Or something deeper. "You're one of us now," Hank told her one evening. "Whatever happens, we got your back." "Nothing's gonna happen. Garrett came once. He'll come again." Clara's stomach clenched. "You think so? I know so. Men like Victor Crane don't give up. They just wait for the right moment." Hank's eyes were serious. "But when he comes, he'll find out we're ready. This whole ranch, every man here would die for you, Mrs. Thornton. You've earned that." Clara didn't know how to respond. She'd never earned anything like that before. Never had anyone willing to stand between her and danger. "Thank you," she said finally. "But I don't want anyone dying for me." "With respect, ma'am, that ain't your choice." The weeks kept passing. October bled into November. The air got colder. The work got harder. Clara's hands cracked and bled from the cold, but she kept working, kept pushing, kept proving herself every single day. And slowly something changed between her and Jed. It started with small things. He'd bring her coffee in the barn when the mornings got cold. She'd save him the best pieces of bread from her baking. He'd make sure the fire was built up before she woke. She'd mend his shirts without being asked. They didn't talk about it, didn't acknowledge it. But something was growing in the silence between them, something tender and fragile and terrifying. One night, Clara was sitting on the porch after the children were asleep. The stars were thick overhead, and the cold bit at her cheeks, but she couldn't make herself go inside. The door opened behind her. Jed sat down on the step beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Mind won't quiet." "Know the feeling." They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. Just two people who'd learned that some things didn't need words. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said finally. "You can ask." "That day with Garrett, when you stood between him and me." Clara's voice was careful. "Why'd you do it?" Jed was quiet for a long moment. "Because it was right." "That's not a real answer." "It's the only one I got." Clara shook her head. "You barely knew me. I'd been here 2 days. You could have handed me over and been done with the trouble." "No." Jed's voice was hard. "I couldn't." "Why not?" He turned to look at her. In the moonlight his face was all shadows and angles, but his eyes caught the light. "Because I looked at you and I saw Martha." Clara's breath caught. "Not in appearance," Jed continued. "Martha was fair-haired, gentle, soft-spoken. But the fire in you, that stubborn refusal to break no matter what life throws at you, that was Martha. That was the woman I married, the woman I loved. Jed. I watched her die." His voice cracked, just for a moment. "I held her hand while she bled out, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do. The baby was already gone. She was going too. And she looked at me with those eyes, so much love, Clara, so much love. And she said, 'Don't let this break you.'" Clara's eyes burned. But it did break me, Jed said. I let it. For 5 years I let it break me into pieces. I stopped caring about the ranch, about the men, about myself. I was just waiting to die. What changed? Jed looked at her, really looked at her. You walked through my gate. You looked me in the eye and refused to leave. You stood there with your dying daughter in your arms and dared me to turn you away. He shook his head slowly. I couldn't do it. Something in me, something I thought was dead, looked at you and woke up. Clara didn't know what to say. The weight of his words pressed down on her chest. I ain't good at this, Jed said quietly. Talking, feeling, any of it. But I need you to know something. What? You matter, Clara. You and your children, you matter to me. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to trust someone. Every man I've ever trusted has hurt me. I know. I'm scared. I know that too. What if I can't ever? Then you can't. Jed's voice was gentle, patient. I ain't asking for anything, Clara. I'm just telling you the truth. However long you're here, however long it takes for you to feel safe, I'll wait. And if you never feel safe, if you never trust me, that's all right too. You've still got a place here. You've still got protection. That don't change. Clara looked at this man who kept offering her things without asking for payment, who kept breaking every rule she'd learned about how the world worked. You're a good man, Jed Callahan. I ain't sure about that. I am. Clara reached out and touched his hand. Just for a moment. Just enough. I'm sure. They sat together in the cold until the moon moved across the sky. Not touching. Not talking. Just sharing the silence with someone who understood. When Clara finally went inside, something in her chest felt different. Lighter. Like a door she'd kept bolted for years had cracked open just a little. She checked on her children, all sleeping peacefully, and lay down in her narrow bed. For the first time since she could remember, she fell asleep without dreaming of running. But peace never lasted long in Clara's life. She should have known better than to trust it. The letter came on a gray November morning. A rider from town faced grim, an envelope in his hand, marked with the seal of the Redemption Courthouse. Clara knew what it was before she opened it. She read it once, twice, 3 times. Her hands started shaking. Clara, Jed had come up behind her. What is it? She handed him the letter. He read it. His face went from stone to something darker. Son of a bitch. What does it mean? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. It means Victor Crane's got a judge in his pocket. It means they're claiming you kidnapped your own children. It means they're coming to take them away and put you in jail unless you return to the Golden Rest to settle your debt. The world tilted. Clara grabbed the porch rail to keep from falling. They can't, she breathed. They can't take my children. They're gonna try. When Jed looked at the letter again, his jaw was tight enough to crack. 3 days. They're sending a marshal with a warrant. He crushed the paper in his fist. 3 days, Clara. Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, her whole body shaking, her mind screaming with a terror she couldn't contain. 3 days. In 3 days, they were coming to take everything she loved. And there wasn't a damn thing she could do to stop them. Jed pulled Clara to her feet before she could shatter completely. Look at me. She couldn't. Her eyes were fixed on nothing, her mind drowning in the words on that crumpled paper. Kidnapping. Warrant. 3 days. Clara. Jed's voice was sharp, commanding. Look at me. She looked. We ain't giving up. You hear me? We ain't letting them take your children. How? The word came out broken. They got a judge. They got a marshal. They got the law on their side. The law ain't always right. Don't matter if it's right. Matters if it's got teeth. Clara's whole body was shaking. I've seen what happens to women who fight the law, Jed. They lose. Every single time they lose. Jed gripped her shoulders, hard enough to hurt, hard enough to cut through the panic. You ain't every woman, and you ain't alone. His eyes burned into hers. We got 3 days. That's 3 days to figure this out. 3 days to find a way to fight. Fight how? I don't know yet, but I ain't watching them take your children, not while I'm breathing. Clara stared at him. This man who barely knew her. This man who kept putting himself between her and destruction. Why? She whispered. Why do you keep fighting for me? Jed's jaw tightened. You know why. Say it. Clara, say it. He was quiet for a long moment. Then his hands dropped from her shoulders and he looked away. Because I love you. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She stopped breathing. I know I ain't supposed to. Jed continued, his voice rough. I know it's too soon and you ain't ready, and you got every reason not to trust me. But I can't help what I feel. I look at you and I see everything I thought I'd lost. Everything I thought was dead in me. He finally looked at her again. I love you, Clara Thornton. I love your fire and your strength and the way you'd walk through hell for your children. And I'll be damned if I let Victor Crane or anyone else destroy what you've built. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can love you back, she said honestly. I don't know if I know how anymore. I ain't asking you to love me back. I'm just asking you to let me fight for you. Clara reached up and touched his face. Her fingers were cold against his weathered skin. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The next 3 days were a war council. Jed gathered everyone in the kitchen that night. Hank, Ezra still moving slow from his injury, but refusing to be left out. Old Pete. Even the children sat at the table, though Clara had tried to send them to bed. They're part of this. Samuel set his voice steady. They're coming for us too. We got a right to know what's happening. Clara couldn't argue with that. Here's what we know. Jed spread the crumpled letter on the table. Victor Crane's got a judge named Morrison, who's been on his payroll for years. Morrison signed a warrant claiming Clara kidnapped her own children and fled to avoid paying debts. A federal marshal named Bodine is coming in 3 days to execute the warrant. Can't the local sheriff do something? Hank asked. Sheriff Webb's a good man, but he ain't got jurisdiction over a federal warrant. Best he can do is watch and make sure things stay legal. Legal. Ezra spat the word. Ain't nothing legal about what Crane's doing. Crane don't care about legal. He cares about winning. Jed looked around the table. We need proof. Something that shows the judge is corrupt, that the warrant's based on lies. Something that'll make a real court throw this whole thing out. What kind of proof? Old Pete's voice was quiet. I don't know yet, but Crane's been running his operation for years. He's got to have made enemies. Got to be other women he's done this to. Jed turned to Clara. You said there were others, at the Golden Rest. Other women trapped the same way you were. Clara nodded slowly. There were. Most of them gave up, stopped fighting. But a few... She paused, remembering. There was a woman named Rose Whitfield. She tried to run same as me, got caught and brought back. But before they caught her, she said she'd hidden something. Proof of what Crane was doing. Ledgers, names, dates. Where? I don't know. She never got a chance to tell me. They came for her that same night. What happened to her? Clara's face went pale. I don't know. She disappeared. Crane said she'd paid her debt and moved on, but nobody believed him. The table went silent. So we find Rose, Jed said finally. Or we find what she hid. In 3 days? Got a better idea. Nobody did. Jed rode out before dawn. Clara watched him go, her heart in her throat. He was riding toward redemption, toward Victor Crane's territory, to find proof that might not exist. It was dangerous, maybe suicidal. But he went anyway. He'll be okay, Mama. Samuel stood beside her in the gray morning light. Mr. Callahan's tough. I know, baby. You love him, don't you? Clara's breath caught. What? The way you look at him. The way you look when he's around. Samuel's voice was quiet. Pa's been gone 8 months. It's okay if you love someone else now. Clara turned to her son. This boy who'd grown up so fast, who understood things no 10-year-old should have to understand. I don't know what I feel, Sam. Everything's so mixed up right now. But if you did love him, if you figured it out, would that be bad? No. Clara's voice was soft. No, baby. That wouldn't be bad. Samuel nodded. Good. Because I think he loves you too. And Lily already calls him Mr. Cowboy, like he's part of the family. Clara laughed despite everything. It came out watery and broken, but it was still a laugh. When did you get so wise? Had to be. Somebody's got to look out for you. Clara pulled her son into a hug and held on tight. The first day passed in agonizing slowness. Clara tried to work, tried to keep her hands busy and her mind focused, but every few minutes she'd find herself staring at the horizon looking for Jed, praying he was safe. The children were quiet. Even Tommy, usually bursting with energy, moved through the day like a ghost. He knew something was wrong. They all did. That night, Lily climbed into Clara's lap and pressed her face against her mother's chest. Mama? Yes, sweetheart. The bad man's coming, isn't he? The one you ran away from. Clara's heart clenched. How do you know about that? I hear things when you think I'm asleep. Lily's small voice trembled. Is he gonna take us away? Clara held her daughter tighter. No, baby. Nobody's taking you away. Promise. I promise. It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, but she made it anyway because that's what mothers did. They promised. They fought. They lied to their children about the darkness coming for them, and then they stood in front of it with bare hands and broken hearts. I love you, Mama, Lily whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything in this world. Jed came back on the second day. He rode in at sunset exhausted and covered in dust, but his eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. Clara ran to meet him before he'd even dismounted. Did you find something? Maybe? Jed swung down from his horse, wincing slightly. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. I found Rose Whitfield. Clara's heart stopped. She's alive. Barely. Crane had her locked in a cabin about 5 miles from town. Uses it to keep women who cause trouble. Jed's voice was grim. She's in bad shape, Clara. Whatever he's been doing to her for the past year, it broke something. But she's alive, and she talked. What did she say? The ledgers are real. She hid them before Crane caught her. In a church, if you can believe it. Under a loose floorboard in the confession booth. Jed reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a leather-bound book. I got them. Clara took the ledger with shaking hands. Opened it. Names, dates, numbers. A careful accounting of every woman Victor Crane had trapped, used, and sold. 20 years of evidence written in neat columns, like a merchant tracking inventory. Oh, God. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. All these women. There's more. Jed pulled out a folded paper. Rose gave me this. A letter she wrote to Judge Morrison 3 years ago, begging for help. He never responded, but she kept a copy. And there's a note in Crane's handwriting at the bottom. Clara unfolded the letter. At the bottom, in a different hand, were 2 words, handled. $500. Proof of the bribe. Clara breathed. Proof of everything. Crane's operation, the judge's corruption, the whole rotten system. Jed's jaw was tight. We take this to a real judge, a federal one outside Crane's territory, and the whole house of cards falls down. But the marshal's coming tomorrow. I know. We don't have time to get to a federal judge. I know that too. Jed's eyes met hers. But we got something else. We got enough to make a stand. To make that marshal think twice before he does Crane's dirty work. You think it'll be enough. I think it's all we got. That night, nobody slept. Clara sat with the ledger in her lap, reading entry after entry, page after page. So many names, so many lives destroyed. She'd thought she was alone in her suffering, but she was just one of dozens. Hundreds, maybe. Victor Crane had built an empire on broken women, and tomorrow she was going to help tear it down. "Mama." Tommy's voice came from the doorway. "I can't sleep." "Come here, baby." Tommy padded over and climbed into her lap, even though he was getting too big for it. He pressed his face against her shoulder. "Are the bad men coming tomorrow?" "Some men are coming, but they ain't gonna take you. I won't let them." "What if they try? Then we fight." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "I'm scared, Mama." "Me too, sweetheart." "You are. Being scared don't mean you're weak. It means you understand what's at stake." Clara kissed the top of his head. "Brave people get scared all the time. They just don't let it stop them." "Is Mr. Callahan brave?" "The bravest man I know." "I want to be like him when I grow up." Clara's throat tightened. "You already are, baby. You already are." The marshal came at noon. Clara saw the dust cloud first, then the shapes of riders coming over the ridge. More than she'd expected, 6 men, maybe 7 plus a wagon. They were coming in force. Jed appeared beside her on the porch. "You ready?" "No." "Me neither." He touched her hand briefly. "But we're doing this anyway." The ranch hands were already in position. Hank by the barn with a rifle, Ezra and old Pete flanking the yard. Even Sheriff Webb had come. He'd ridden out at dawn after Jed sent word about what they'd found. The riders stopped 30 feet from the porch. The man in front was tall and lean, with a face like granite and a badge pinned to his chest. Federal Marshal, the real deal. Behind him, Clara saw a face that made her blood freeze. Victor Crane. He was fat and smiling, dressed in a fine suit that looked ridiculous out here in the dust and heat. His eyes found Clara and held her like a snake watching a mouse. "Well, well." Crane's voice was oil and honey. "There's my runaway." "Get off my land." Jed's voice was ice. "Now there's no need for unpleasantness." The marshal raised a hand. "I'm Marshal Bodine. I've got a warrant for the arrest of Clara Thornton on charges of kidnapping and debt fraud. I'm also authorized to take custody of her children until the matter is settled in court. That warrant's based on lies. That's for a judge to decide, Mr. Callahan, not you." Bodine reached into his coat. "I'm going to step down now and serve this warrant. I'd appreciate it if your men would lower their weapons." "Not till you hear what we've got to say." Bodine paused. "And what would that be?" Jed stepped forward, the ledger in his hand. "This is Victor Crane's personal record of every woman he's trapped, exploited, and sold over the past 20 years. Names, dates, amounts." He held up the letter. "And this is proof that Judge Morrison has been taking bribes from Crane to look the other way. $500 to ignore a woman begging for help." Crane's smile faltered. "That's preposterous." He sputtered. "Those are obvious forgeries." "Shut up." Bodine's voice cracked like a whip. He dismounted slowly, his eyes on the ledger. "Let me see that." Jed handed it over. The marshal read in silence. His expression didn't change, but Clara saw his jaw tighten with every page he turned. "This is..." Bodine shook his head. "Where did you get this?" "From a woman named Rose Whitfield. Crane had her locked in a cabin 5 miles from town. She's willing to testify." Crane's face went purple. "This is absurd. That woman is a liar and a thief." "I said shut up." Bodine turned to face Crane, and there was something dangerous in his eyes. "You told me this was a simple debt collection. You told me the warrant was legitimate." "It is legitimate. Judge Morrison signed this warrant." Bodine held up the letter. "The same Judge Morrison who took $500 to ignore a kidnapping victim." "I don't know anything about that." "Mr. Crane." Bodine's voice was quiet. Deadly. I've served warrants for 15 years. I've seen a lot of guilty men, and I've gotten very good at knowing when someone's lying to me. He stepped closer to Crane. You're lying. Crane's mask cracked. His oily smile twisted into something ugly. You can't prove anything. Your word against mine. The word of a runaway whore against a respected businessman. Watch your mouth. Jed's voice was murder. Or what? Crane laughed. You'll shoot me in front of a federal marshal, go ahead. Then you'll hang, and I'll still get what I want. What you want is a crime. What I want is what's owed to me. Crane's eyes found Clara again. You think you can run from me? You think this rancher and his ledger can protect you? I own half the judges in this territory. I own the sheriff in Redemption. By this time next week, you'll be back where you belong, and your children. You'll never touch my children. Clara's voice cut through the yard like a blade. She stepped off the porch and walked toward Crane. Her legs were shaking, but she kept moving. She'd spent her whole life being afraid of men like him. Today, she was done. You want to know something? Clara's voice was quiet but steady. I used to be afraid of you. Used to lie awake at night terrified you'd find me. Terrified of what you'd do. She stopped 3 feet from him. But I'm not afraid anymore. You know why? Crane's smile flickered. Do tell. Because I finally understand what you are. You're not powerful. You're just pathetic. Clara's eyes burned into his. You trap women because no woman would ever choose you. You sell them because that's the only way anyone would ever want you. You're not a businessman, Victor. You're a sad, broken man who can only feel big by making others feel small. Crane's face twisted with rage. You little... Marshal Bodine. Clara turned her back on Crane, deliberately, dismissively. I'm willing to testify against this man. So is Rose Whitfield. So are probably a dozen other women whose names are in that ledger. All we need is a fair hearing. A real judge. Someone outside Crane's pocket. Bodine studied her for a long moment. Mrs. Thornton, he said slowly. When I rode out here this morning, I was planning to execute a warrant and be back in Redemption by nightfall. He held up the ledger. Now I'm planning to ride to Austin and present this evidence to the territorial court. Victor Crane won't be coming with me, but he won't be leaving either. What do you mean? I mean I'm arresting him. Bodine turned to Crane. Victor Crane, you're under arrest on suspicion of human trafficking, corruption of public officials, and unlawful imprisonment. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Crane's face went white. You can't do this. I have connections. Your connections are about to get very uncomfortable. Bodine nodded to his men. Take him. 2 deputies moved forward. Crane tried to run, but he was fat and slow, and they caught him in 3 steps. He screamed as they dragged him toward the wagon, screamed about lawyers and judges and powerful friends. Nobody listened. Clara watched them throw him in the wagon and chain his hands. She watched the man who'd haunted her nightmares reduced to a blubbering mess. She felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just a vast, empty relief. It was over. A hand touched her shoulder. Jed. You okay? Clara turned to look at him. This man who'd fought for her. Who'd ridden into danger to find proof. Who'd stood beside her against everything. Yeah, she said softly. I think I am. Mama! 3 small bodies slammed into Clara at once. Tommy and Lily and Samuel all talking at once, all crying, all holding on like they'd never let go. You did it, Tommy was shouting. You beat the bad man. You were so brave. Is it really over? Lily's voice was muffled against Clara's dress. He can't take us away. It's really over, sweetheart. Nobody's taking you anywhere. You were amazing, Mama. Samuel's voice was thick with tears he was trying not to shed. The way you stood up to him. The way you said all those things. I've never seen anything like it." Clara held her children tight. Her whole body was shaking with relief, with exhaustion, with the release of tension she'd been carrying for months. They were safe. Her children were safe. Marshal Bodine approached, hat in his hands. "Mrs. Thornton, I owe you an apology. I should have looked into this warrant more carefully before I rode out here." "You didn't know?" "No, but I should have asked." Bodine's face was grave. "What Crane did to you, to all those women, it's unforgivable. I give you my word, he'll face justice. Real justice." "Thank you, Marshal. Thank you for having the courage to fight." Bodine put his hat back on. "Not many people stand up to men like Crane. What you did today, it matters." He mounted his horse and rode out with his men and his prisoner. Clara watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Then she sat down in the dirt and cried. Jed sat beside her. He didn't say anything, just put his arm around her shoulders and let her cry. The children gathered close, not understanding why Mama was crying when they'd won, but offering comfort anyway. Clara cried until there was nothing left, until the fear and the anger and the grief had all drained out of her, leaving her empty and clean. When she finally looked up, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and gold. "What happens now?" she asked. Jed's arm tightened around her. "Now we live," he said simply. "Now we build something good." Clara leaned against him, her children pressed close on every side. For the first time since she was 16 years old, she believed it might actually be possible. The weeks after Victor Crane's arrest passed like a fever dream. Clara kept waiting for something to go wrong. Kept waiting for the other boot to drop, for the peace to shatter, for some new threat to come riding over the horizon. But nothing came. The days stretched out quiet and ordinary, filled with work and meals, and the sounds of her children laughing. She didn't know what to do with ordinary. "You're looking at that fence like it might bite you," Jed said one morning, finding her frozen in the middle of the yard with a bucket of feed in her hands. Clara blinked. "Sorry, got lost in my head." "Anything you want to talk about?" "I don't know. It's stupid." "Try me." Clara set down the bucket. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she hated that they were. "I keep waiting," she said quietly, "for something bad to happen, for someone to come and take it all away. I've never had peace this long, Jed. I don't know how to trust it." Jed was quiet for a moment. Then he moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I waited 5 years," he said. "After Martha died. Waited for something, anything to make me feel alive again. Told myself the waiting was protecting me, keeping me safe from more hurt." He shook his head slowly. "But it wasn't protecting me. It was just another way of dying." "How'd you stop?" "You showed up." Jed's voice was simple, matter of fact. "You walked through my gate with 3 hungry kids and refused to take no for an answer. And somewhere in those first few days I realized I had a choice. I could keep waiting for life to happen to me, or I could start living again." Clara's throat tightened. "What if I don't know how?" "Then we figure it out together, one day at a time." She looked at him, this hard man who'd become soft in all the ways that mattered. This stranger who'd become the person she trusted most in the world. "Okay," she whispered, "one day at a time." The trial came in December. Clara had to testify, had to sit in a courtroom in Austin and tell a room full of strangers what Victor Crane had done to her, what he'd tried to do. Jed came with her. So did Sheriff Webb and Rose Whitfield, who'd healed enough to travel. The children stayed at the ranch with Hank and the others Clara had fought Jed on, that wanting to keep them close, but in the end, she knew he was right. They didn't need to hear the details of what their mother had survived. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the ledger, about the dozens of women Crane had trapped and sold, about the corrupt judge who'd helped him do it. People had come from all over the territory to watch the trial. Clara sat in the witness chair and told her story. She told them about her husband dying in the mine, about stumbling into the golden rest with nothing but her children and desperation, about the debt that grew no matter how hard she worked, about the other arrangements Crane had suggested when she couldn't pay. She told them about running, about 40 miles through October cold with a dying daughter in her arms, about Jed Callahan's gate and the sign that said no women, no children, no exceptions. And she told them about the man who'd let her in anyway. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. The prosecutor stood up. "Mrs. Thornton, you've heard Mr. Crane's defense, that you signed a contract, that you knew the terms, that you fled without fulfilling your legal obligations." "Yes, sir, I heard it." "What do you say to those claims?" Clara looked directly at Victor Crane. He was thinner now, grayer. The weeks in jail had stripped away some of his oily confidence. "I say that a contract signed under coercion ain't worth the paper it's printed on. I say that a man who traps starving women and sells them to the highest bidder ain't a businessman, he's a criminal. And I say that any law that protects men like him over women like me is a law that needs to change." The gallery erupted. People were shouting, some in agreement, some in outrage. The judge banged his gavel for order. Through it all, Clara kept her eyes on Crane. He looked away first. The verdict came 3 days later. Guilty, on all counts. Human trafficking, corruption, fraud, unlawful imprisonment. The judge sentenced Crane to 25 years in the state penitentiary. Judge Morrison got 10 years for his role in the scheme. Clara was standing outside the courthouse when they led Crane away in chains. He passed within 10 feet of her, close enough that she could see the hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You think you've won. I've got friends. Your friends are gone." Clara's voice was calm, steady. "Your money's gone. Your power's gone. All you've got left is a cell and 25 years to think about what you did." Crane opened his mouth to respond. Clara turned her back on him and walked away. She didn't look back. The ride home took 3 days. Clara and Jed traveled in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Sometimes they talked about the trial, about the ranch, about the future, but mostly they just existed in each other's company. On the second night, they stopped at a small inn. Jed got 2 rooms without being asked. Clara stood in the hallway between their doors, something unspoken hanging in the air. "Thank you," she said. "For what? For being patient, for not pushing, for understanding that I need time." Jed nodded slowly. "I told you I'd wait." "I know. And I want you to know." Clara stopped, swallowed hard. "I want you to know that I'm starting to feel something. Something I didn't think I could feel again. I just need a little more time to be sure. Take all the time you need. What if I never get there? What if I'm too broken?" Jed reached out and touched her face. Gentle, reverent. "You ain't broken, Clara. You're the strongest person I've ever known. And whatever you decide, whether you love me or whether you don't, I'll still be glad you walked through my gate." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "How are you real?" she whispered. "I'm just a man who got lucky enough to meet you." He stepped back and opened his door. "Good night, Clara." "Good night, Jed." She went into her room and closed the door behind her. Then she sat on the bed and cried, not from sadness this time, but from something she couldn't name. Relief, maybe, or hope, or the terrifying realization that she might actually be falling in love. They got back to the ranch on Christmas Eve. The children came running before they'd even dismounted. Tommy and Lily reached Clara first, nearly knocking her off her feet with the force of their hugs. Samuel held back, trying to act grown, but Clara pulled him in anyway. "We missed you so much." Tommy was practically vibrating with excitement. "Hank let us help with the horses, and old Pete taught me how to whittle, and Lily learned to make biscuits and—" "Breathe, baby." Clara laughed and kissed his forehead. "I missed you too." "Did you beat the bad man?" Lily asked, her eyes huge. "Did you make him go away forever?" "Yeah, sweetheart. He's going away for a long, long time." "Good." Lily's small face was fierce. I hate him. I know, baby. But we don't have to think about him anymore. It's over. Really over. Really over. Lily considered this. Then her face broke into a smile. Does that mean we can have Christmas now? Clara laughed again, a real laugh, free and clear, the kind she'd forgotten she could make. Yeah, sweetheart, we can have Christmas now. They had Christmas. It wasn't fancy. They didn't have money for expensive gifts or elaborate decorations, but they had a tree that Samuel and Tommy had cut down themselves. They had candles that Lily had helped make from beeswax. They had cookies that Clara had baked while the children were sleeping, and presents wrapped in brown paper. And they had each other. Clara watched her children tear into their gifts on Christmas morning. Tommy got a wooden horse that old Pete had carved. He whooped so loud the chickens started clucking in alarm. Samuel got a real hunting knife with a leather sheath, and the pride on his face made Clara's heart swell. Lily got a doll that Jed had somehow found in town with a blue dress and real yarn hair, and she cradled it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, Mr. Cowboy, Lily said solemnly, climbing into Jed's lap. She's beautiful. You're welcome, little one. What did you name her? Clara asked. Lily thought hard. Hope, she said finally. Because that's what Mama said we have now. Clara's eyes burned. She blinked hard and looked away. Jed caught her eye across the room. He smiled a real smile, the kind that transformed his whole face, and Clara felt something click into place inside her chest. This was it. This was home. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara found Jed on the porch. He was sitting on the steps looking up at the stars. The cold bit at Clara's cheeks, but she sat down beside him anyway. Thank you, she said, for today, for everything. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I want to. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. I never had a Christmas like this. Not even when I was a child. My father wasn't much for celebrating. What was he like? Mean. Drunk most of the time. Hit my mother until she died, then started hitting me. Clara's voice was flat, emotionless. It was the only way she could talk about it. When I was 16, he owed money to a man named Henry Thornton. Gambling debts. He couldn't pay, so he offered me instead. Jed's jaw tightened. Henry was twice my age. Not cruel exactly, just indifferent. I was a thing he'd acquired, not a person he'd married. He worked me hard and gave me children and died in a cave-in when Lily was 6 months old. And then Crane. And then Crane. Clara shook her head. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been if things had been different. If my father had been a good man. If I'd been able to choose who I married. If I'd had any say in anything at all. You've got a say now. Clara looked at him. Yeah, I do. They sat in silence for a while, watching their breath fog in the cold air. Jed, Clara's voice was quiet. I need to tell you something. Okay. I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Clara hadn't planned to say them. They'd just come out like they'd been waiting years for the chance. Jed turned to look at her. His face was unreadable in the darkness. Say that again. I love you. Clara's voice was stronger now. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I knew how. But somewhere between that first day and now you cracked something open in me. Something I thought was dead. Clara, let me finish. She took his hand in both of hers. I'm still scared. I'm still learning how to trust. I might mess this up in 100 different ways, but I don't want to keep waiting anymore. I don't want to waste any more time being afraid of something good. Jed was quiet for a long moment. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. Then he pulled her into his arms. I love you too, he said against her hair. I've loved you since the day you stood at my gate and refused to leave. I loved you when you saved Ezra's life with nothing but determination and a sewing kit. I loved you when you stood up to Crane and told him exactly what he was. Clara pressed her face against his chest. He smelled like wood smoke and horses and home. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Whatever you want. I ain't pushing for anything." Clara pulled back and looked at him. His face was open, vulnerable, waiting. "I want to stay," she said. "I want to build a life here with you. I want my children to grow up safe and loved and knowing what a good man looks like. That's all I want too." "Then we want the same thing." Jed smiled. Clara smiled back. And then finally she kissed him. It wasn't a long kiss, wasn't passionate or desperate, or any of the things Clara might have expected. It was soft and gentle and tentative. Two people who'd been broken finding their way back to something whole. When they pulled apart, Clara was crying. "What's wrong?" Jed's voice was alarmed. "Did I do something?" "No." Clara laughed through her tears. "No, you did everything right. That's why I'm crying." "I don't understand." "I know, I don't either." She wiped her eyes. "I think I'm just happy, and I don't know what to do with happy." "I could teach you." "Yeah." Clara smiled up at him. "How?" "One day at a time, same as everything else." The winter passed slowly. Clara fell into a rhythm she'd never known before. Morning chores, breakfast with her family, work through the day, supper together at night. Simple things, ordinary things. The kind of life she'd dreamed about in her darkest moments, but never believed she could have. She and Jed didn't rush anything. They held hands sometimes, kissed when the children weren't looking, talked for hours about everything and nothing about their pasts, their fears, their hopes for the future. Samuel started calling Jed Sir, with respect instead of distance. Tommy followed Jed around like a puppy, desperate to learn everything about ranching, and Lily. Lily had claimed Jed completely. She called him Mr. Cowboy still, but she said it like other children said, Daddy. "She's attached to you," Clara said one evening, watching Lily fall asleep in Jed's arms. "I'm attached to her too." "It doesn't bother you being a father figure to children that aren't yours." Jed looked at her like she'd said something ridiculous. "They are mine. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters." He shifted Lily's weight, brushing hair from her sleeping face. "I lost a child once. I thought I'd never get another chance. But your children, they gave me that chance. They gave me a reason to keep living." Clara's heart clenched. "Jed, I want to adopt them. Officially. Give them my name." He met Clara's eyes. "If you'll have me." Clara stopped breathing. "Are you asking?" "I'm asking you to marry me." Jed's voice was steady, but she could see the fear underneath. "I'm asking you to let me be your husband and their father. I'm asking for the rest of our lives." Clara's mind raced. A month ago, a week ago, she would have panicked, would have run from the weight of such a commitment. But now she just felt peace. "Yes," she said. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." Clara laughed a bright, surprised sound. "Yes, you can adopt my children. Yes to everything." Jed's face transformed. The hard lines softened. The shadows lifted. For a moment, he looked like a completely different person, younger, lighter, full of a joy he'd forgotten existed. "You mean it?" "I mean it." He kissed her then, with Lily still sleeping between them, and Clara tasted salt and realized they were both crying. "When?" Jed asked when they finally pulled apart. "Soon, before I can talk myself out of it." "Spring." "When the weather breaks." Clara thought about waiting months, about more time to second-guess herself, to let fear creep back in. "No," she said. "Now, before the end of winter." "That's only a few weeks away." "I know." Jed studied her face. "You sure I don't want you to feel rushed? I've waited my whole life for something good. I don't want to wait anymore." Lily stirred in Jed's arms, murmuring something about horses. Clara reached out and stroked her daughter's hair. "Besides," she added softly, "I want her to have a father who chose her, not because he had to, Because he wanted to. I do want to, more than anything. Then let's not wait. Jed smiled that rare, beautiful smile that Clara had come to treasure. All right, he said. Let's not wait. They told the children the next morning. Tommy dropped his fork mid-bite. You're getting married, like real married. Like real married, Clara confirmed. And Mr. Callahan's gonna be our PA. Tommy's voice was rising with excitement. For real? If you want me to be, Jed said carefully. I know I can't replace your real father. I don't remember him much, Tommy admitted. I was little when he died, but I remember he wasn't around a lot, always working in the mines. Tommy, Clara started. I'm not saying I didn't love him. Tommy's face was earnest. I'm just saying I like having someone who's here, who teaches me things and eats supper with us and doesn't disappear for weeks at a time. Clara's heart ached. She hadn't realized how much her children had noticed Henry's absences, how much they'd felt the lack of a father who was truly present. Samuel. Jed turned to the older boy. You haven't said anything. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. His face was unreadable, so much like Clara's when she was guarding her thoughts. You make her happy, Samuel said finally. Mama, I mean, she smiles now, laughs. She didn't used to do that. Sam. It's true, Mama. Samuel looked at her directly. You were surviving before, now you're living. And if Mr. Callahan, if Jed is the reason for that, then I'm glad. Is that a yes? Jed asked. Samuel considered. Do I have to call you Pa? You can call me whatever you want. Jed is fine. Sir is fine. Even, hey you, if that's what feels right. A small smile tugged at Samuel's lips. Maybe I'll start with Jed. See how it goes. That works. Then yes. Samuel nodded. I'm glad you're marrying Mama. Lily had been quiet through all of this, which was unusual for her. Clara looked at her youngest daughter with concern. Lily? What do you think, sweetheart? Lily's face scrunched up with concentration. If you marry Mr. Cowboy, she said slowly, does that mean I can call him Daddy? Clara's throat closed up. She couldn't speak. Jed knelt down in front of Lily's chair, putting himself at her eye level. You can call me Daddy whenever you're ready, he said softly. Today. Tomorrow. Never if that's what you want. It's your choice. Lily reached out and put her small hand on Jed's face. Daddy, she said, testing the word. Then she smiled that brilliant, innocent smile that could light up a room. I like it. Jed pulled her into a hug so tight Clara worried for a moment he might crush her. But Lily just laughed and hugged him back. I have a daddy now, she announced to no one in particular. A real one. Clara wiped her eyes and pretended she wasn't crying. The wedding was simple. They held it in the barn, the same barn Clara had cleaned out months ago, now decorated with winter greenery and candles that made the whole space glow. Sheriff Webb officiated, having gotten himself ordained for the occasion. The ranch hands stood as witnesses dressed in their cleanest clothes with their hair slicked back. Clara wore a dress she'd made herself from fabric Jed had bought in town. Nothing fancy, just cream-colored cotton with small blue flowers embroidered along the hem. But it was new, and it was hers, and she'd chosen it herself. That was what mattered. Samuel walked her down the aisle. At 10 years old, he was trying so hard to be a man, and Clara had never been prouder of him. Tommy stood next to Jed as best man, because I'm his best friend. Tommy had explained seriously, and Lily served as flower girl, scattering dried rose petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. When Clara reached the front of the barn and took Jed's hands, she wasn't nervous anymore. This was right. This was exactly where she was supposed to be. Dearly beloved, Sheriff Webb began, we are gathered here today. Wait. Lily's voice rang out across the barn. Everyone turned to look at her. What is it, sweetheart? Clara asked. Lily marched up to the front with her flower basket still clutched in her hands. She looked at Jed with absolute seriousness. "Do you promise to take care of Mama?" Jed nodded. "I promise." "And me and Tommy and Samuel?" "I promise." "And Penny the horse." A ripple of laughter went through the barn. Jed's lips twitched. "I promise to take care of Penny, too. And you won't leave. You won't go away and not come back." Jed knelt down so he was eye level with her. "I won't leave," he said quietly. "Not ever. Not for anything. I'll be here every single day for the rest of my life." Lily studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. "Okay," she said. "You can marry Mama now." She went back to her spot next to Tommy. Clara was laughing and crying at the same time. "I apologize for the interruption," she told Sheriff Webb. "No apology needed." Webb's eyes were suspiciously bright. That might be the most important part of the ceremony. He cleared his throat and continued. The vows were simple. Clara promised to love, honor, and cherish, to stand beside Jed through good times and bad, to build a life together based on trust and respect and partnership. Jed promised the same, and then he added something that wasn't in any traditional vow. "I promise to protect you." He said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not because you're weak, you're the strongest person I know, but because you deserve someone in your corner. I promise to listen when you need to talk and be quiet when you need peace. I promise to love your children like my own, because they are my own. And I promise to spend every day of my life proving that you made the right choice walking through my gate." Clara couldn't see through her tears anymore. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Sheriff Webb said. "Jed, you may kiss your bride." Jed cupped her face in his calloused hands and kissed her soft and sweet and full of promise. The barn erupted in cheers. Clara pulled back and looked at her husband and smiled. "Hello, Mrs. Callahan," Jed said. "Hello, Mr. Callahan." "How does it feel?" Clara thought about all the years of pain that had led to this moment. All the fear and running and desperate survival. All the time she'd told herself that happiness wasn't for people like her. She'd been wrong. "It feels like coming home," she said. Jed pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Around them their children laughed, and the ranch hands clapped, and someone started playing a fiddle that Clara hadn't even known anyone owned. And Clara Callahan finally, truly, irrevocably, Clara Callahan let herself believe in happy endings. Spring came slow that year. Clara watched it arrive from the porch of the house that was now officially hers. The frost retreating inch by inch, the grass turning from brown to green, the first wildflowers pushing up through soil that had been frozen for months. She'd never paid much attention to seasons before. When you were running, when you were surviving, you didn't have time to notice whether flowers were blooming or leaves were falling. You just kept moving. Now she had time. Now she had a porch to sit on, and a husband who brought her coffee in the mornings, and children who ran across the yard without fear in their eyes. "You're thinking too loud again." Jed settled into the chair beside her, his own coffee steaming in his hands. "I can hear it from inside." Clara smiled. "Just watching the spring come in. And wondering when I'm going to wake up." Jed reached over and took her hand. His fingers were rough and warm and real. "You're awake," he said. "This is your life now. Our life." "I know, I just—" Clara shook her head. "It's been 6 months since I walked through your gate. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like I've been here forever. Which do you prefer?" "Forever. Definitely forever." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher. In the distance, Clara could hear Tommy's voice. He was in the barn with Hank, learning how to check the horse's hooves. Samuel was somewhere in the north pasture, helping with the new calves that had started arriving last week. And Lily was inside playing with her doll Hope, and talking to her in that serious way 4-year-olds talk to their toys. This was her family now. This was her home. "I got something for you," Jed said. Clara looked at him. "What kind of something?" "The official kind." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Came in the mail yesterday, but I wanted to wait for the right moment. Clara took the paper with suddenly trembling hands. She unfolded it slowly, her eyes scanning the words. Adoption certificate. Samuel Henry Callahan. Thomas James Callahan. Lily Rose Callahan. Jed. Her voice cracked. It's done. Legal and binding. They're mine now, ours in every way that matters. Clara stared at the paper. Her children's names officially joined to Jed's, to hers. A family not just in practice, but in law. I didn't know you'd... When did you... Started the paperwork the week after we got married. Judge Patterson, the one who helped with Crane, he expedited it as a favor. Jed squeezed her hand. I wanted it to be a surprise. Clara couldn't speak. The tears were coming too fast, blurring the words on the page, until she couldn't read them anymore. Hey! Jed's voice was gentle. This is supposed to be good news. It is good news. Clara laughed through her tears. It's the best news. I never thought... She couldn't finish. Instead, she threw her arms around Jed's neck and held on tight. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. Thank you for choosing us. I didn't choose you. Jed's arms came around her solid and sure. You chose me. You walked through my gate and saved my life. All I did was recognize a miracle when I saw one. They told the children that night at supper. Tommy's reaction was exactly what Clara expected, whooping and hollering and knocking over his glass of milk in his excitement. We're really Callahans now, he kept asking. Like really, really. Really, really, Jed confirmed. And you're really our pa forever. Forever. Tommy launched himself at Jed with enough force to nearly knock his chair over. Jed caught him and held on his face, buried in Tommy's hair, his shoulders shaking with something that might have been laughter or might have been tears. Samuel's reaction was quieter. He studied the adoption certificate for a long time, his face unreadable. Samuel. Clara touched his shoulder. Are you okay with this? Samuel looked up. His eyes were bright, but his jaw was set in that stubborn way that reminded Clara so much of herself. My name, he said slowly. It says Samuel Henry Callahan. That's right. We kept your middle name, your father's name, so you'd still have that connection to him. Samuel was quiet for another long moment. I like it, he said finally. Henry was a good name, a good man, even if he wasn't around much. But Callahan? He looked at Jed. Callahan feels like home. Jed reached across the table and gripped Samuel's shoulder. You are home, son. You always will be. Samuel's composure cracked. Just for a moment. A single tear slipped down his cheek before he wiped it away with the back of his hand. Thank you, he said, for being what we needed. Lily's reaction was the most memorable. She climbed into Jed's lap, took his face in both her small hands, and looked at him with absolute seriousness. Daddy, she said, does this mean you're stuck with us forever? Forever and ever, Jed confirmed. Even when I'm grumpy. Especially when you're grumpy. Even when I'm old like Mama, Clara snorted. I'm not old, sweetheart. You're older than me, Lily said with perfect 4-year-old logic. Fair point. Lily turned back to Jed. Even when I'm older than Mama. Even then. Promise. Jed kissed her forehead. I promise. Lily nodded satisfied. Then she snuggled against his chest and closed her eyes. Good, she mumbled. Because I like having a daddy. Clara watched them, her husband, her daughter, and felt something shift in her chest. Not pain this time, not fear. Just a vast, overwhelming love that filled every corner of her being. This was what she'd been running toward. Not away from Victor Crane. Not away from danger. She'd been running toward this, toward family, toward safety, toward a love she'd never dared to believe existed. And she'd finally found it. The seasons turned. Spring melted into summer. Summer blazed into fall. Fall cooled into another winter, and then another spring. Time passed the way it did on a working ranch, marked not by calendar pages, but by calving seasons and harvests, by children growing taller and relationships growing deeper. Tommy shot up like a weed, all gangly limbs and boundless energy. At 9 years old, he was already better with horses than most grown men, and Jed had started trusting him with real responsibility, checking fence lines, helping with the branding, even riding into town for supplies. "He's got a gift," Jed told Clara one evening, watching Tommy put a nervous young mare through her paces. "Natural talent, the kind you can't teach. He gets it from you. He gets it from working hard. That's all you, Clara." Samuel at 12 had become Jed's right hand. He was quieter than his brother, more serious, but there was a steadiness to him that the ranch hands had come to rely on. When problems arose, a sick cow, a broken pump, a dispute with a neighboring rancher, Samuel was often the one who found the solution. "He's going to run this place someday," Hank observed. "Got the mind for it." "He can run it if he wants to," Clara said. "But only if he wants to. I won't have my children living lives they didn't choose." Lily at 6 remained the heart of the ranch. She'd learned to read the previous winter, and now she carried books everywhere, reading aloud to anyone who would listen. The ranch hands pretended to be annoyed when she cornered them with stories, but Clara noticed they always found reasons to be in the kitchen when Lily was practicing her letters. "She's got them all wrapped around her finger," Jed observed with a grin. "She's got you wrapped around her finger too." "I know, I don't mind." Clara herself had changed in ways she was only beginning to understand. The woman who'd stumbled through Jed's gate starving, desperate, half-dead with exhaustion, had become someone else entirely. Someone stronger, someone softer, someone who could laugh without checking over her shoulder first. She still had nightmares sometimes, still woke in the dark with her heart racing and phantom footsteps echoing in her ears. But now, when she woke, Jed was there, solid and warm and real, and the fear faded faster each time. "Do you think about him still?" Jed asked one night when a nightmare had pulled Clara from sleep. "Crane." "Sometimes. Less than I used to." "He can't hurt you anymore. He'll be in prison for another 20 years at least." "I know. It's not him I dream about, really. It's who I was when I belonged to him, who I almost became." Jed pulled her closer. "Who did you almost become?" "Someone who gave up. Someone who stopped fighting." Clara's voice was quiet in the darkness. "When I first got to the Golden Rest, there was a woman there, older, been there for years. She told me to stop struggling, said it was easier that way, said if I just accepted what I was, the pain would stop." "But you didn't." "No, but I thought about it. Every single day I thought about it." Clara shuddered. "That's what I dream about. That version of myself. The one who stopped fighting and let them win." Jed was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That version of you doesn't exist. It never did. You couldn't have given up, Clara. It's not in your nature." "How do you know?" "Because I know you. I've watched you for 2 years now. I've seen you face down armed men and corrupt judges and 100 small crises that would have broken anyone else. You don't give up. You don't stop fighting. It's who you are." Clara thought about this, about the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. "Maybe," she said finally. "Or maybe I just found something worth fighting for. The children. Them. You. This life." Clara turned in his arms so she could see his face in the darkness. "I spent my whole life fighting to survive, running from one danger to the next. But here with you, I'm not fighting to survive anymore. I'm fighting to live. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Surviving is about not dying. Living is about building something that matters." Clara touched his face. "You taught me that. You and this ranch and our family. You taught me that I deserve more than just survival." Jed kissed her forehead. "You always deserved more. You just needed someone to help you believe it. The second spring on the ranch brought changes none of them expected. It started with Clara feeling tired all the time. She chalked it up to the extra work. Spring was always busy with new calves arriving and gardens to plant and 100 tasks that had been put off during winter. But the tiredness didn't go away. And then came the nausea. "Mama." Lily found her one morning bent over the wash basin, her face pale. "Are you sick?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little under the weather." But Clara knew. Some part of her had known for weeks. She just hadn't let herself believe it. She told Jed that night after the children were asleep. "I'm pregnant." Jed went very still. His face was unreadable in the lamplight. "Say something," Clara whispered. He stopped. Started again. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure. All the signs are there." "But," Jed's voice cracked. "The doctor in town said after Martha, he said I probably couldn't. Doctors have been wrong before." Jed sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. His hands were shaking. "Jed." Clara knelt in front of him, suddenly worried. "Are you okay? Is this... Do you not want... Jed looked at her, and she saw tears streaming down his weathered face. "Clara, I've wanted this for 15 years. I just never thought, I didn't dare hope." Clara took his hands in hers. "Well, start hoping, because it's happening." Jed pulled her into his arms with a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "A baby," he kept saying. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby. We need to." He pulled back his face wild with joy and terror. "What do you need? What can I do? Should you be resting? Should I get the doctor?" Clara laughed. "I need you to breathe, and maybe sit down before you fall down." "I'm fine. Jed sat down abruptly. "I'm going to be a father." "You're already a father." "I know, but this is different. This is..." He looked at her with wonder. "This is a piece of both of us. Something we made together." Clara sat beside him and leaned her head against his shoulder. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." Jed wrapped his arm around her. "I'm terrified and overwhelmed and happier than I've ever been in my life." "Good, because that's exactly how I feel." They told the children the next morning. Tommy's reaction was immediate and loud. "I'm going to be a big brother. A real big brother." "You're already a big brother," Clara pointed out. To Lily. "I know, but this is different. This is a real baby. Can I teach it to ride horses? Can I show it how to rope? Can I..." "You can do all those things, eventually, when the baby's old enough." "How long will that take?" "A few years." Tommy's face fell. "That's forever." "It'll go faster than you think." Samuel took the news more quietly, but Clara could see the emotion in his eyes. "A new brother or sister," he said slowly. "Someone who's been here from the beginning, who never had to run or hide or be scared." "That's right." Clara touched his face. "Someone who gets to start fresh, who gets to know from the very first day what it feels like to be safe and loved." Samuel nodded. "That's good. His voice cracked. "That's really good, Mama." Lily's reaction was the most complicated. She was quiet for a long moment, her small face scrunched up in thought. Then she looked at Jed. "If you have a real baby," she said slowly, "will you still love me?" Jed knelt down immediately. "Lily, look at me." She looked. "You are my real child. You and Samuel and Tommy. This baby doesn't change that. It doesn't make you less mine or less important." Jed's voice was fierce. "You are my daughter. You always will be. Nothing will ever change that." Lily studied his face for a long moment. "Promise?" she whispered. "I promise. On my life, Lily Rose Callahan. I promise. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Okay, she mumbled against his shoulder. Then I want a sister. Brothers are too noisy. Clara laughed through her tears. We'll see what we can do. The pregnancy was easier than Clara expected. She'd been pregnant 3 times before, and each time had been marked by fear and uncertainty. With Samuel, she'd been barely 17, married to a stranger alone in a mining camp miles from anyone who might help. With Tommy, she'd been exhausted from chasing a toddler, still trying to figure out how to be a wife to a man she didn't love. With Lily, she'd been grieving. Henry had died a month before she realized she was carrying his child. But this pregnancy was different. This time, she had Jed. She had a home. She had children who were excited and ranch hands who treated her like precious cargo, and a community that had become family. This time, she wasn't afraid. You're glowing, Jed told her one evening, his hand resting on her growing belly. I've never seen you so beautiful. I'm huge. You're perfect. I can't see my feet. I'll be your feet. Jed kissed her forehead. I'll be whatever you need. Clara leaned into him, feeling the baby kick against his palm. I never thought I'd have this, she said quietly. Any of it. The husband, the home, the family. I spent so many years just trying to survive that I forgot to imagine anything beyond that. And now I can't imagine anything else. The baby came in October. Clara's labor started just after midnight with a sharp pain that woke her from a dreamless sleep. By dawn, she was in the throes of it, gripping Jed's hand hard enough to leave bruises. You're doing great. Jed's voice was steady, but Clara could see the fear in his eyes. You're so strong, Clara. So brave. I don't feel brave. Another contraction hit and Clara cried out. I feel like I'm dying. You're not dying. You're bringing life into the world. The midwife from town, a sturdy woman named Mrs. Patterson, had arrived an hour earlier. She moved efficiently around the room, checking Clara's progress, offering encouragement. Nearly there, she said. One more big push, Mrs. Callahan. Clara pushed with everything she had. And then finally, blessedly, it was over. A cry split the air, high and thin and perfect. It's a girl, Mrs. Patterson announced, placing the baby on Clara's chest. A beautiful, healthy girl. Clara looked down at her daughter, her 4th child, her 2nd daughter, but her first with the man she loved, and felt her heart crack open. Hello, little one, she whispered. Welcome to the world. The baby had Jed's dark hair and Clara's gray eyes. She was tiny and perfect and absolutely furious at being disturbed from her warm, dark home. She's got your temper, Jed said, his voice thick with emotion. Good. She'll need it. What should we call her? Clara had been thinking about this for months, running through names in her head, trying them out, discarding them one by one. Hope, she said finally. After Lily's doll. After everything we've been through. She looked up at Jed. Hope Callahan. Jed's eyes filled with tears. Hope. That's perfect. He leaned down and kissed Clara's forehead, then kissed the baby's tiny head. Welcome home, Hope, he whispered. Welcome to your family. The children came in one by one to meet their new sister. Tommy was awed into uncharacteristic silence. She's so small, he breathed. Was I ever that small? Smaller, Clara said. No way. Way. Samuel held Hope like she was made of spun glass, his big hands cradling her with infinite gentleness. She's beautiful, Mama. She looks like you. She looks like all of us, like our family. Lily was the last to meet her sister. She climbed onto the bed, carefully mindful of Clara's tired body, and peered at the bundle in Clara's arms. She's wrinkly, Lily announced. All babies are wrinkly. Was I wrinkly? Very wrinkly. Lily considered this. Then she reached out one small finger and touched Hope's cheek. Hope opened her eyes and looked directly at her big sister. "Hi," Lily whispered. "I'm Lily. I'm going to teach you everything. How to read and how to pet horses, and how to make Daddy give you extra cookies." Clara laughed, wincing at the pull on her tired muscles. "Don't teach her that last one." "Too late." Lily grinned. "Sisters have to stick together." Clara looked around the room at her family. At Tommy, vibrating with barely contained excitement. At Samuel, steady and strong and growing into a remarkable young man. At Lily, already planning adventures for her baby sister. At Jed, watching them all with tears streaming down his face. And at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms, completely unaware of the journey that had brought them all to this moment. 3 years ago, Clara had walked through a stranger's gate with nothing but her dying children and the clothes on her back. She'd been starving, desperate, running from a man who wanted to destroy her. Now she was home. Now she was safe. Now she was surrounded by people who loved her, not because of what she could do for them, but simply because she was Clara, because she existed, because she mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Jed asked, settling onto the bed beside her. "Everything," Clara said. "Nothing. Just how different things are now. How different I am." "You're still you." "I know, but I'm also more than I was." Clara looked at him. "You did that. You and the children in this place. You showed me who I could be when I wasn't just trying to survive." Jed took her hand in his. "You showed yourself. I just got to watch." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, their newborn daughter between them, their other children gathered close. "I love you," she said. "I don't think I say it enough." "You say it plenty." "I mean it more than I say it." Jed kissed her hair. "I know, I feel the same way." Outside, the October sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The same sky Clara had watched on her first day at the ranch when she'd stood in the yard covered in blood and terror, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. She hadn't. She'd made the best decision of her life. Years later, people would ask Clara how she'd done it, how she'd survived everything she'd survived, how she'd built a life from nothing, how she'd turned a desperate gamble into a love story. She always gave the same answer. "I walked through a gate," she would say, "and I refused to leave." It was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was more complicated. It involved a hard man who'd learned to be soft, children who'd found a father, a woman who'd discovered she was worth fighting for. The whole truth was that sometimes survival wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to do more than just keep breathing. You had to find people worth breathing for, a place worth standing still for, a love worth risking everything for. Clara had found all three, all, in a ranch at the end of a dusty road behind a gate with a sign that said, "No women, no children, no exceptions." Clara Thornton had become Clara Callahan. She'd become a wife, a mother, a partner. She'd become someone who laughed without fear and loved without reservation and woke every morning grateful to be alive. She'd become finally and completely herself. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. In the end, the silence that had filled the Callahan Ranch for so many years didn't disappear. It transformed. It became the comfortable quiet of a family eating supper together, the peaceful hush of children sleeping safely in their beds, the tender stillness between two people who'd found each other against all odds. It became the silence that heals. And in that healing silence, surrounded by the family she'd built and the love she'd earned and the life she'd finally learned to live, Clara Callahan closed her eyes and breathed deep. She was home. She was whole. She was free.